Okay, people are quickly coming on. We will start in a moment. All right. Terry, if you want to go ahead and start, it seems like we've got a stable number now.
Okay. Good evening and welcome. Thank you for being with us tonight, Wednesday, September 28th, for the Napa County Board of Supervisors Districts 1 and 3 Candidate Forum. I'm Terry Beck of the League of Women Voters of Napa County. Tonight, we are here to help educate Napa County voters by giving you the opportunity to hear from the candidates for this race. While we usually provide in-person forums due to continuing COVID-19 concerns, we are coming to you via Zoom webinar. We're providing Spanish translation via the Zoom interpreter capability. If you wish to listen to the Spanish translation, click the globe-like icon, usually on the bottom right of your screen, and check Spanish. Our translator for tonight is Dalila Hernandez. We are recording this forum and it will be posted on YouTube, our League of Women Voters website, Facebook, and on our other social media platforms. Per FCC rules, no other recording of this forum or excerpts from the League of Women Voters recording are allowed. The League of Women Voters is a trusted membership organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. We are nonpartisan and do not endorse or oppose candidates or political parties. The League does participate in issue advocacy and voter education. If you would like to join us in our work, please visit our website, lwvnapa.org, for membership information and much, much more. The League encourages civil discourse, and the candidates have all agreed to participate under guidelines set for this forum. The candidates have agreed to confine their remarks to their qualifications and issues and not to resort to defamatory remarks about the other candidate. We expect all registrants to also be respectful of all the candidates. Microphones and video are off for everyone except the candidates and the League of Women Voters Forum team. Please remember to mute yourself when you are not speaking. Our League's team is helping with this forum tonight. Our moderator, who is our moderator?
Bernie, it's me.
Bernie. And our timekeeper is Linda Dedeker-Yolo. Our technical host is Sherry Thomas. I will now turn the evening over to Bernie. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our candidates. As Terry mentioned, tonight we have the candidates for the positions of Board of Supervisor for District 1 and 3. These are the top two candidates from the primary in June. And this forum, we hope, will provide the opportunity for the community to learn about the candidates, giving each candidate time for an opening statement, about an hour for questions, and then a finishing statement. The questions were solicited in advance from the community and League of Women Voter members. Our team screened the questions to avoid duplication and to ensure nonpartisanship and civility. The candidates have not seen the questions in advance. The candidates will keep themselves on mute when not answering and ensure that they can see the timekeeper's screen so that they know when it's green, they start. When it's yellow, they have 30 seconds left, and finally a red screen when time is up. I retain the right to mute any candidate who continues to run over their allotted time or violates their signed agreement of civil discourse. We will start by introducing the candidates in the order that we will start in. First, we will have John Dunbar for District 3. And then we will have Joelle Gallagher for District 1. and Suzanne for District 1, and Ann Cottrell for District 3. And so we will start with 1.5 minutes for the opening statements. And John, we start with you.
Well, Bernie, thank you very much. And thanks to everyone that's taking their time to learn a little bit more about us. What I really want to stress about, especially District 3, is the importance, the real significance in experience for our next supervisor. We're losing all 3 Up Valley mayors in District 3, and we're also losing 20 years of experience from District 3 supervisor. We have a new county CEO that will be coming on board in early 2023. So experience in municipal government and leadership matters, and it's magnified because of all these changes. To have continuity, to have an understanding of what is involved in county government. I've been mayor in Yountville for 12 years and on the town council for 18 years. And during all that time, I have worked closely, not only with my colleagues in Yountville, but throughout Napa County to make sure that we are serving the interests of all our residents, our businesses, across all different aspects of our community. I don't think there's a lot of difference that you'll hear from any of the candidates about our priorities. And so for me, the experience I bring to this race in District 3 is paramount, and I'm ready to go and understand the dynamics at the county level, as well as the individual jurisdictions that make up District 3. So I look forward to being your supervisor.
Thank you, John. And now we will go to Joelle.
Thank you, Bernie, and thank you to the League for hosting the event tonight. You know, in less than 42 days, Napa County residents will be electing 2 new supervisors. We've been campaigning for almost 2 years, and it has been both a challenging and exhilarating experience. Serving the communities in Napa County has been my primary focus for the last 30 years. With the exception of raising my daughter and shepherding her through NVLA, Harvest Middle School, and Napa High, my greatest efforts have concentrated on protecting our ag and open space lands and working with staff and community partners to elevate the voices of our workforce and our families. Developing experience and skills in the areas of land use and health and human services has, I think, uniquely positioned me to take on the role of county supervisor. I'm extremely proud of my many endorsements, including Supervisor Brad Wagenknecht, Napa Mayor Scott Sedgley, all 3 firefighter associations, the Sierra Club, the Dems of Napa Valley, the Democratic Central Committee, the Central Labor Council, the National Union of Healthcare Workers, and 4 former supervisors, people who well understand the demands and challenges of the job. I'm confident that I am the right candidate to serve as District 1 supervisor, and I hope that my many years of leadership and hard work have earned me your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Joelle. And Suzanne, I'm sorry, I left out your last name when I was introducing you. I'm too short. I was getting a text and distracted myself. Sorry.
No problem. No problem. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. It's great to be here this evening. Many of you are familiar with my background and story, so I will dive right into why I'm running here. I think we can all agree that Napa County is at a crossroads. Napa needs new leadership that has the right vision and is untethered to decades of stagnant thinking. That vision includes, number 1, environmental and economic sustainability. I'm committed to protecting our natural resources and taking concrete actions on climate that will bring tangible solutions and results, be it tackling our complex fire and water issues or building sustainably. Number 2, the county needs prudent financial management coupled with a strong legal foundation. The county has squandered taxpayer dollars by paying out miscellaneous settlement agreements, dollars that could have gone to families in need, road repairs, traffic, and addressing homelessness. We need to take control of how we manage the organization in a prudent manner. Leadership comes from the top, and I have a plan to address the high turnover, the low morale, and overall culture at the county. And finally, a family-first approach to leadership. As a mother to 2 small children, and many of you know my family fought hard for the American dream, I now find it my duty to serve and to fight for those in need. I want my kids to inherit an earth that's better than how we found it. And I'm committed to creating opportunities such as affordable housing, accessible childcare, and so much more. Napa needs some new blood and fresh leadership to hit the reset button on the county. My community involvement, professional experience, unique background, and common sense approach to getting things done for our citizens will allow for that reset. And I will be a supervisor for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Suzanne. And Anne.
Thank you so much, Bernie. Good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this fall forum. For everyone on the call, thanks for making the time to attend. Some quick background. I was born and raised here in Napa County, and I've raised my 3 boys here with my husband. It's my youngest son's homecoming float building week, so I was just scooting from there. I graduated from Yale University and UC Berkeley School of Law. I'm in my 8th year on the Napa County Planning Commission. I also serve on the Community Wildfire Protection Plan Core Team and the Watershed Information and Conservation Council. So I have legal skills and experience, a deep understanding of county-wide issues, not just one community, but the entire county, and a track record as a thoughtful, independent decision maker and a collaborative and collegial leader. And just quickly, in the past 18 months, I've spent a lot of time walking in the neighborhoods all over District 3. I'm doing pretty well with my step count. But from all the walking and listening, you know, I have several takeaways about residents' concerns. People are worried about how to prepare for wildfire, how to prepare for drought and climate change. They're concerned we don't have enough housing. And so many folks were telling me, hey, it's getting less affordable for me to even be here. Residents want to feel like their voice is being heard at the county. And finally, they want our local leaders to work better together. So those are all issues I see as priorities too, as well as ongoing protection of our ag and natural resources. So I'm great for those conversations. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you all. I know it's hard when you get going talking to be able to watch it for the colors in the time as well, but I appreciate that. All right, we will start now with the first question that kind of feeds off of a lot of the introductions. What do you consider the most important challenges facing our county right now? And how would you address those issues? And we will start with Joelle.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I was unmuted. Well, we have a lot of challenges ahead of us. And I believe the first thing that we need to do is really, quote unquote, get the house in order. We're going to be hiring a new CEO, a permanent county council, and a new public health officer. It's going to be really, really important that those people are people that have vision and can work very closely with the board and with the community. I think we're going to have to review the work of the CAC and look at the baseline data that just came out, just was reported on our baseline for greenhouse gas emissions, and look at how we can move forward, perhaps handle some of the low-hanging fruit, as we say, while creating a comprehensive climate action plan, something that maybe can be used for the entire county rather than going jurisdiction by jurisdiction. Unfortunately, we can't just continue to plan. We have to actually do as well. So we need to be doing those in parallel tracks. I think we're going to have to work very closely with our cities and our developers to determine how we move forward on housing policy so that we can begin to see the creation of workforce housing. At the same time, I'm going to be learning how to be an effective supervisor as well. So lots of priorities, both personally and for the county.
All right, thank you, Joelle. Same question, Suzanne.
Thank you, Bernie. So as all of us have been doing, we've been knocking on doors for over a year now, and I've been categorizing the main issues on the macro level and the micro level. So on the macro level, we're all worried about fire, water, and housing, and that's all related to climate and environmental justice. You know, on the fire and water front, I do think that we have the capability to bring technology and innovation to detect and suppress and mitigate the fires so that what happened in 2017 and 2020 never happens again. I think on water, we're working on this integrated water management program that reduces urban water usage. We have an incredible opportunity to increase recycled wastewater use and many, many more other initiatives that we as a community are working on. And finally, on housing, one of my fortes as an attorney is developing public-private partnerships with developers to identify underutilized parcels and build the right kind of housing that we need. So those are sort of the larger issues countywide. But then on the micro level, as we have sat in many living rooms and stood on many front porches, you hear the struggles of the everyday Napan, particularly in District 1, which, as many of you know, has many humble pockets. And the locals feel forgotten. They don't feel as though their needs are being addressed, whether it's road repair. Our roads should be pristine with our county budget that we have, whether it's traffic, addressing all the traffic issues that we have, particularly through downtown Napa. And finally, the homelessness issue is an issue that is creeping up into District 1 and into neighborhoods, and we need to get these people those supportive services.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Anne, same question.
Thank you. Yeah, I like that. I think both Suzanne and Joelle touched on so many of the same issues that I'm concerned about. I'm in my opening statement, I mentioned wildfire, drought, and housing, and those really are the substantive issues. And I think climate change folds right in there, particularly with wildfire and drought. And then process-wise, we will be hiring a new CEO, and I really see we need to rebuild some trust at the county level, both for county elected leadership and also for staff who I feel, when I've talked with folks, say we'd like to see more clarity of vision and shared vision from the board. So that's something I'm interested in working on. I think a great example is from the city of Napa, where they do a goal setting workshop at the beginning of every year. And I'd love to see our board try something like that. On wildfire, as I mentioned, being involved in the community wildfire protection plan process, that is really moving along well. And I think that's a great example of communities coming together to work on that. And drought, we've got our drought contingency plan and our Sustainable Groundwater Management Act that will continue to move forward too. And with housing, we just had some new state laws that I think will open up some doors to AB 211 and SB 6 that's going to allow for more access to previously zoned commercial development. So I'm looking forward to the possibilities there as well.
Thank you. And John.
Thank you. And I appreciate the question, because this goes back to my opening comments as well, which is across all the different topics and the priorities, you hear a similarity from all of us, because those are very obvious priorities for Napa County, the residents, the businesses, for the protection and safety and vitality of our county. But it comes down to leadership again. When I was the president of the League of California Cities in 2019 and 20, and I've been with that organization for 17 years, I was in charge of a board of 54 city leaders and staff. Talk about having to work together collaboratively, well beyond a single jurisdiction, but throughout 482 cities in California, and working on all the priorities that we consider our key concerns here in Napa County. So it made me a better elected official by being exposed to that kind of a network of resources and people. I've worked closely with our assembly member, Cecilia Aguiar-Curry, for example, for over 12 years when she was the mayor of Winters, and now is our assembly member, who is endorsing me because she knows my ability to lead has been apparent and has been obvious when I have been not only leading Yountville, but collaborating with all of our other elected officials throughout Napa County, as well as our board of supervisors and city staff. So we don't know what the next priority is going to be. None of us knew there would be a pandemic or an earthquake or a wildfire. So we need leadership that's ready for anything.
Thank you, John. Okay, now this question, we will start with Suzanne. And this question goes back to, do we think the board and the municipalities declared a climate emergency and committed to achieving net zero climate pollution by 2030? Do you think the board of supervisors has taken appropriate action? And if elected, what actions would you do to champion to drive emergency level mitigation measures? And that starts with Suzanne.
Thank you, Bernie. I do think we've reached the level that we are in climate emergency mode. And I think that the county has done a significant amount, but I think that we can do more. One of the things that I brought up in the in previous debates is electrifying our county's fleet of vehicles. I think we have an incredible opportunity there. There's been successes with electric car ride shares placed strategically in different pockets so that workers can commute to their places of business. And I also believe that, you know, we need to educate. We have the largest Hispanic population in District 1 so that they understand the importance of climate. And it does go back to that environmental justice about understanding what it means, you know, to recycle, to reduce greenhouse gases. All of those things are all intertwined. You know, I think, again, it goes back to the recycled wastewater. We have an incredible opportunity to work with the Napa Sanitation District. And I think we also can work to incentivize wineries and vineyards to utilize more of that. So, you know, we're getting there, but, you know, I have always been a woman that sees a transaction through from A to Z. And I think that we can do far more with new and fresh leadership.
Thank you. And Anne.
Thanks. Well, so I want to just go through let's start from first principles, which is what are our biggest GHG emission sources? And we know as a county, and Joelle mentioned earlier, we now have the inventory. So that's a really helpful first step. But it's buildings, transportation, and solid waste. So making sure as a county that we're prioritizing work toward those things. And, you know, Suzanne mentioned the electrification of the fleet. I think that's a really critical one. We also know that moving away from gas in homes as a source of energy is important. And I'd like to cite at Watson Ranch, for example, that new development that's being built in American Canyon. You know, they're not plumbing for gas. Everything will be electric. So I think that's a positive step. Something I'd like to see the county do that I haven't seen yet is a move that the city of Napa is doing, which is hiring a climate manager position, someone who's going to work across departments to help each department meet climate goals. So that's something I think we should be considering too. So, and finally, working on increasing our compliance with SB 1383 to remove organics from our waste stream is going to be an important piece to continue to move forward on. So it's multiple tracks.
Great. Thank you. And John.
Yeah, I appreciate that one of the core values and issues that the League of Women Voters is focused on is protecting the county from a climate action perspective. And I also appreciate the fact that it lists specifically physical, economic, and public health effects. Because if we don't have a sustainable and strong local economy, which is based on agriculture and our wine, restaurant, and hospitality sectors, we are unable to perform all of the other environmental protection and climate initiatives that we want to prioritize. We've seen that, and I've been a member of the Climate Action Committee from the very beginning of that committee. We decided that we needed to have a baseline set, and we just got that last week at our meeting on Friday to determine the biggest greenhouse gas emitters, which we all agree and understand are buildings and transportation. But what are we going to do about that? And how are we going to afford to do something about that? We're going to work collectively as a county. And I've already reached out to friends and colleagues that work in Sonoma County who are actually ahead of us in several climate and environmental initiatives to work together as a region so we can collaborate and share best practices. As we have also talked among the jurisdictions about sharing a climate employee that is dedicated to serving the broad Napa County interest beyond any individual jurisdiction, because we need to be working on this together.
Great. Thank you, John. And Joelle, same question.
Thanks, Bernie. I think definitely there are things that we can be doing early on. And I think I've mentioned these over the past year or so, banning gas-powered leaf blowers, banning glyphosate, making sure we have solar on all of the warehouses that are going in the industrial areas, getting to zero net on the county buildings themselves. I think we really need to be committed to net zero water increases when we look at development. We need to be using reclaimed and recycled water whenever possible. and also look at all different ways that we can conserve. If we use more water than what is available, that just isn't sustainable at any level. And American Canyon actually has implemented this net zero approach to growth. And I think that shows that it can work in Napa County and that we need to be looking at that also. I also think that we should look at implementing the LAFCO recommendation to consolidate our water districts. This doesn't mean that any particular jurisdiction would lose power. It just means that we can leverage our regional influence, create efficiencies, and reduce inequities between the agencies. And I think that we really need to make sure we're managing the watershed as a system, not surface and groundwater separately, or the entire river watershed and subbasin separately. We know that the Napa River subbasin is an overdraft, and our plan needs to manage the water, all the water in the valley, not just what is flowing under the ground in the bottom of the valley.
Thank you.
And we need to measure what we have so we can collectively manage it. Thanks.
Sorry. There we go. Next question, we will start with Anne. How do you envision balanced growth in Napa County that serves both local needs, the agricultural industry, and the tourist hospitality industry?
Yeah, I think that's the $64,000 question, is what does that look like? And I think the word balance is key, because that's it's dynamic. It means that what it looks like this year is different than next year, and or over a course of time. So really, I think going back to when we're looking at projects, understanding how the impacts of a particular, say, a commercial project impacts a community. For example, we know right now we're in a jobs housing imbalance where we have more jobs than we have housing available. So to me, we're out of balance on that. So we need to figure out as a county how we're going to bring more housing in to meet the need that's here. And also, I think what that means is when we're having projects come in that create jobs, that's terrific, but we need help with those applicants to say, how are you going to house your employees? So that's one example. And also looking at the challenge with our water resources. Again, that's going to be a balancing act so that we're not going deeper into debt with our water budget at the expense of our residents and our community.
Thank you. And John?
Thanks. This is another example of where working with the individual jurisdictions and the county matters. We should be having the conversations between all the jurisdictions and the county on a regular basis, which has not been happening. Affordable housing of any kind should be primarily in the cities and the town. Water resources can be protected by having recycled water available from the cities and the town, like we have done in Yountville, where we reclaim, recycle over 93% of our wastewater, and then contract with property owners in the unincorporated county so they can protect their groundwater sources and not need that. We need to be working more closely as a county with each of the cities. That's the way I've been operating as mayor in Yountville, working with my elected colleagues, because we want to protect our agricultural preserve. That we all agree on that. How do we do that without allowing any kind of sprawl or the pressure to provide much needed housing? We need to have that embedded in our cities and the town while protecting the individual characteristics of those cities and town. So it's a collaboration, it's a partnership with our cities and the town and the county on a regular basis about all of our priorities.
Thank you. And Joelle? You might be on mute.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, really, I think that housing and wages are really at the crux of this. As we know, starter homes no longer exist. The 1,400 square foot or smaller home is now $1 million in Napa, and very few young families can afford this. So they move away or they never move here. So how do we get to housing that is affordable? I think, and this has been mentioned before, but making sure that developers who bring jobs to Napa County create housing. That could be in a myriad of different ways in terms of an inclusionary housing ordinance, but our housing fees should not be so low that they're preferable to actually building housing. A developer that builds housing is creating not only a community asset, but an asset for themselves. And I think something to really highlight is the county under Jen Palmer's department and the city of Napa under Molly Radican are collaborating with nonprofit housing developers to create many new permanent supportive housing units. I believe it'll be over 200 units coming up. Additionally, we have the proximity workforce housing program at the county, and there is going to be a new city and county ADU loan program that's in creation. This is a really exciting opportunity to create housing that will help low income homeowners develop ADUs and provide housing that's affordable for our workforce.
Thank you. And Suzanne?
Thank you, Bernie. You know, I think at the end of the day, and all of us agree that we do have to work together, cities and counties and the industry that is the main economic engine that fuels this valley, provides jobs, provides resources. And we have the hospitality industry that collects 1% of TOT from overnight hotel stays for workforce housing projects. So I think we need to find the right developers that can create those public-private partnerships and really implement a project that works for the community. You know, I think we also have an opportunity to incentivize businesses to have best practices so that we can move toward, you know, lowering our carbon emissions, really creating, I call it the greenification, you know, and many people are already doing a lot of quiet work behind the scenes, both in the industry and at the county level and the city level. You know, what I've learned is that the city and county are at odds sometimes. And given that District 1 encompasses a large part of the city of Napa, it really should be a symbiotic relationship. You know, I think that, you know, that communication needs to be key. And when I'm supervisor, that's from day one, I've said it before, that will end. And, you know, at the end of the day, I think that creating that community outreach, that balance, I think there needs to be a community healing of sorts between many of the stakeholders and the people involved, both from the nonprofit world, from the hospitality and wine industry and agricultural industry as well.
Thank you. And we will start this next question with John. And the question is, what would be your process for gaining information for approval for corrections and probation's budgets, including appropriating funding for educational opportunities such as GED classes?
First thing I would do is reach out to the experts. I'm not going to profess to have the level of understanding as an elected official. So I'm going to go to people like Sheriff Oscar Ortiz, who is supporting me because he is an expert in this space. Other elected officials, including retired Sheriff John Robertson, who's supporting me because they have seen my commitment to not only public safety and policing, but also managing our jails and our, you know, the commitment that the county makes to keeping residents safe, but also treating inmates properly and successfully, safely. But I would absolutely learn from the experts. That's typically what I would do, is reach out to all the stakeholders, talk to our law enforcement professionals, talk to our community leaders, and get a perspective, not just from law enforcement, but get a perspective from our faith-based leaders, from our residents, so that we understand the best way forward.
Thank you. And Joelle?
Bernie, can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. What is your process for gaining information to approve corrections and probation budget, including appropriating funding for educational opportunities such as GED classes? Okay,
great. Thank you. Well, one of the first people that I would want to talk to as a supervisor is Amanda Gibbs, who is our Chief Probation Officer, and also our Sheriff, Oscar Ortiz, and also speak with our corrections people as well. Really important to make sure that we understand what is happening on the ground, what they are facing every day, what their needs are, what their staffing needs are, if they have the appropriate facilities and equipment that they need. I think that that's really important. Yeah, many will probably recall that Mary Butler, our previous chief probation officer, did an incredible job of bringing in great programming. And we have a much smaller census at juvenile hall. We've done actually a really great job of diversion and of helping kids stay out of juvenile hall. And that is something we want to continue. So we want to make sure that we make funds available for prevention, and that we do as much of that as possible. We can save a lot of money if we invest in prevention. And, you know, as John said, I think it's important that you get the information from the experts and you understand what their day-to-day realities are. So that would be very important to do.
Great, thank you. And Suzanne, the same question.
Thank you. You know, one of the things I get asked quite often is, what's the first thing you're going to do as Napa County Supervisor? And my answer is consistent and related to this question. And the first thing that I'm going to do is a deep dive into the county as to what's going right and what's going wrong. And that not only discussing issues with the department heads, but also with the day-to-day people. So that includes, in this case, would be the correction officers. It would be with inmates, figuring out what they need, what's important to get them on the right path, get them GED, get them the education that they can so they can move forward in their life. You know, I think we have, you know, within the corrections culture, there's always staffing issues, there's recidivism, there are things that we can correct, and that comes with leadership. You know, and I think it's all about building the right teams. Whenever I've worked on a transaction or even on projects in the nonprofit world, it's all about building the right team to execute. And of course, that would include Sheriff Ortiz and Allison Haley as well, and several other key stakeholders, you know, within our community. You know, I think financial management is related to that. And when you are a small business owner and you understand budgets and you understand profit and loss, and how we are able to save money elsewhere and put funding in a proper bucket so that the needs, you know, are addressed appropriately.
Thank you. And Anne.
Thanks, Bernie. And I like this question because it's specific and also lets us talk about actual process. And I think I would agree with a lot of what has been said before, of going directly to the professionals who have the expertise and are working in the programs, right? Whether it's Amanda Gibbs or Oscar Ortiz, Allison Haley. So making sure that I would go directly to those people and ask for guidance, because I'm not an expert in this. And so also, I think you know, just to call out the programs mentioned, the GED classes, personally, I'm interested in what we can do to fund prevention, because we know that the money we spend on prevention has payouts much more than we can see at the budget line item. So I'm interested in supporting that just as a matter of policy. And then finally, just to talk about budgets a little bit, I would go to our county budget. I mean, I've been spending time looking at last year's budget to understand how different departments are structured and where funds are being spent. And I would also like to see a more programmatic narrative in our budget, so that folks who aren't experts in a particular area and our residents can say, hey, how is our money being spent, and how can we see our programs benefiting from them? So that would be an interest of mine as well.
Great, thank you. Thank you all. And now this question kind of goes off of that a little bit. How will you make the public processes more accessible to underrepresented and diverse communities? And we will start with Joelle.
Thank you, Bernie. This is something really very, very important to me, and one of the main reasons why I'm very, very interested in being part of the Board of Supervisors. I think that we can make government much, much more accessible to people in our community, especially those who have English as a second language or who are monolingual Spanish speaking. I would like to see us write and implement a language access plan. We do not have that in the county. I think there has been some talk, but I don't believe we have a plan. This would really ensure that everyone has access to government information, to our representatives, to the staff, I'd really like to see our public meetings be much more accessible to the public. That's what they're for. We meet on Tuesdays at 9 a.m. I don't think that that is a great time to meet. I understand, that might be difficult to change, but I think we really need to think outside the box and think about how can we get to people who are working 2 and 3 jobs and really hear their voices and understand what their issues are and what's happening in their lives and how we can be of service. So I also want to see simultaneous translation in those meetings. It's kind of a little unnerving when you watch the process and someone comes forward and they speak in Spanish, and it really isn't that welcoming, frankly, and it takes a lot of time. And there are plenty of examples out there, especially in our community, where the translation.
Joelle, sorry, time is up. All right. And Suzanne, to you.
I think this is one of the critical issues that we see in Napa with so many members of the Hispanic community needing access to services and care. And for me, transparency is paramount. You can ask my colleagues, I'm an open book and straight shooter. And I think that we need more of that at the county in terms of meetings, holding them, being able to translate, being able to provide access. And to that end, thankfully, my grandparents pushed me and forced me to speak Spanish to them, and I'm thankful to be fully bilingual. And that has been one of the greatest joys of campaigning, to be able to communicate effectively with so many constituents. And that's related to being a beacon of leadership and hope for the next generation. Leadership is not only about analyzing and problem solving, but really looking at the next generation of young Latinos and Latinas that have aspirations to do great things. I want to do weekly town halls. I'm happy to do those in person and in English and Spanish. And I think that social media, we are seeing an increase in social media within the Hispanic community. So I'm happy to do social media lives fully in Spanish and just be fully accessible as a supervisor.
Thank you. Anne.
Thank you. Yes, I would say some of my experience on the Planning Commission is relevant to this question, because similar to the Board of Supervisors meetings, we meet on a weekday at 9 a.m. And so a lot of folks who have jobs that they need to be at that moment can't participate. So timing is a huge one, to be able to offer some flexibility there on issues where we know that there's going to be a lot of public interest, and translation and interpretation services at any point. And I'd also like to make the point that I think for staffing at the county, really making sure that we're valuing language skills when we're paying folks too, because that's a skill, and that should be something that helps people move up and move throughout the organization, not limits them. Something else I would say is that I think we could do a better job at the county as explaining the parameters of any particular meeting, what the purpose is, what's available here, because we see a lot of people at the Planning Commission who might not have an expectation about what they can hear back, or have confusion. So doing more to explain that. And finally, I think the website is a huge place where we could improve things. American Canyon has a much more transparent one, and I'd like to see us move to that for both being able to have it in more Spanish available, as well as a better understanding of what county services are available there.
Great, thank you. And John.
I'm going to dare to say that this is across the board with all 4 of us. This is a huge priority for all of us, to be as inclusive in all of our populations as possible. And we also need to recognize, especially in American Canyon, for example, there are dozens of languages spoken in American Canyon alone. So we need to be as inclusive and as diverse as possible. We do a pretty good job. The county has done a good job of it during crisis, when we have wildfires, when we have earthquakes and the pandemic. There has been communication through faith-based organizations, making sure that multilingual messaging is put out there. The county has not done a great job of it on a daily basis. I know that personally, because when we were going through the pandemic, I had to work. I was frustrated, to be perfectly honest, with the county's focus on on first testing for COVID and then vaccination clinics being concentrated mostly in the city of Napa in the south part of the county. I work with my colleagues in St. Helena and Calistoga to make sure that we had first testing, mobile testing, and then vaccination clinics up valley for farm workers, for residents that could not make it all the way down to Napa, and make sure that we embraced all of our population. Not everyone receives messaging the same way. We need to recognize that. And I think that we can do that on a more regular basis than just during a disasters and crisis.
Thank you, John. And now the next question. What are your ideas about reducing fire danger and its impact on the county? How do we balance development in high fire danger areas and safety? And we will start with Suzanne.
Thank you, Bernie. As I mentioned in one of the previous responses, I think we do have an incredible opportunity to bring technology and innovation so that we're able to detect the fires quickly and extinguish them faster as well. I've been also looking into technology of these fire boxes where we have these clean burns and which biochar is created from it. I've also, we have personally donated over 70 goats from our herd to fire mitigation that we placed in the hillsides so that they are controlling the fuel. I think that that's important. And again, just working with the community. I know that the state has recently put out some regulations regarding not being able to build on dead end roads. And I think that that needs to be revisited. I think that, that can affect people's ability to live in Napa, people's property values. And I think that we need to work with CAL FIRE to kind of address the right path forward. And I think different pockets of California are affected by fire differently. When it happened in 17 and 20, our economy froze and we suffered majorly in terms of that revenue base. So, I'll work hard both with all the stakeholders and with the community so that we can focus on preventing fire danger once again.
Thank you. And Anne.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been a real priority for me throughout the last 2 years. And before that, when I've served on the Community Wildfire Protection Corps plan. And one of the things, first of all, I think to recognize that we have as a resource is the great energy and organization that's coming out of our fire safe councils, where those neighborhood groups are really coming together, looking at their own needs and forming situations where they can go in and do the defensible space work that they need to do, making a priority list in terms of what things need to be happening first. So to the question about what to do, it's really doing the defensible space work, fuel management, removing a lot of the fuels that really can cause those fires to get out of control. And then the other thing I think that I've been doing in this campaign is a lot of outreach to both our volunteer firefighters and our CAL FIRE staff, and also speaking with Chief Martin and Chief Marcucci to understand the challenges that they face too. So I really think we've got multiple fronts to work on here between neighborhoods, volunteer response, and our CAL FIRE team as well.
Great, thank you. And John.
Yeah, I think there are really two distinct parts of this question. One is fire danger, one is balanced development. And fire danger is significant for us, and it will be every year going forward. When I was the president of the League of California Cities, they started calling me the disaster president because it was during our 2020 wildfires and also during the pandemic. But what that did for me was to be able to represent Napa County at the state and federal level to make sure that the FEMA and our Cal OES personnel understood the rural characteristics of Napa County. Often what the state and the feds do is look at population numbers. We have a lower population number than most places, but we have just as much value in our agricultural lands and our personal safety. Development should be happening primarily in the cities and the town as the general plan has laid out. Suzanne, I appreciate brought up the point of the concern that the Department of Forestry and other state agencies are looking at a one-size-fits-all to protect fire risk, but at the expense of property rights and the ability to even rebuild if your home has been destroyed in a fire. That does not work in Napa County. We need people that have access, like I do, to our state legislators to make sure that we are being heard and we are being valued in Napa County.
Thank you, John. And Joelle.
Thank you. You know, while Measure L failed, we cannot fail to implement the county's wildfire plan. So we will need to go back to the drawing board in terms of how we're going to resource that plan. But we do need to implement that plan because it carries with it all of the different activities that we need to do, like vegetation management, et cetera, that many others have spoken about. And we need to make sure that each jurisdiction gets what it needs from the plan so that everyone can buy into that. We need to work very closely with our firefighters in the city of Napa, the city of American Canyon, CAL FIRE, volunteer firefighters, and the Firewise councils. And we need to really understand what our firefighters need on the ground and in terms of facilities and equipment. And I think it's very important that we bring all of these different groups together to collaborate so that we get the best thinking from everyone and we are able to have a plan that works throughout our county and throughout each jurisdiction. I know that Suzanne mentioned air burn, the burn box. I too have seen that technology. I think it's very, very interesting. I think that the one thing that we'll really have to grapple with is how the Bay Area Air Quality Board views technology like that and whether that meets their needs in terms of what they consider an open burn. But it's certainly worth exploring. There are technologies that will continue to emerge and we will need to continue to research those and talk to the different agencies that have jurisdiction over a lot of these different things.
Great, thank you. And the next question, we will start with Anne. The question is, do you feel that the campaign limit of $4,900 for state and local races that was set for Napa County elections is appropriate?
I think that as many other counties have done in the state, we should look at reducing that number. It's the higher a campaign finance limit is, the harder it is for residents at any income level to feel like they are participating at the same level. So I would be in favor of reducing that number. I think it's not a simple situation because you can't reduce the number of the donation level for PACs and things like that. So I would want to make sure that we as a county had a full conversation about what the impact would be. And I think one of the things I would say at this point is this is a place where we really need to make sure that we're having open dialogue and great journalism in our county, because we need to understand, and back to this issue of transparency that other folks have brought up, you know, we need to have a clear understanding of where money is flowing from to support different causes and candidates.
Great, thank you, Anne. And John.
Yeah, I appreciate that this is a priority for the League of Women Voters. You know, transparency is key. I completely agree with what Anne said. I don't think we have a campaign limit problem. I think we have a trust problem with some folks who feel that there is not transparency and full disclosure about where campaign funding is coming from. I have no problem with all of the requirements that we all have, and I believe we all follow to make sure that the public knows whom it is that is supporting us, why they might be supporting us. It's on us to have honesty and integrity. I think that's the primary concern here. I don't believe that we have a problem. I think we've seen at a national level that money can unduly influence decision making. I honestly don't believe that any of the four of us here are being unduly influenced by the support that we're getting. The reality is getting our message, especially for me personally in District 3, Ann knows this, it's a very large district. It takes a lot of resources to get our message heard from people. And people need to know what our priorities are, what we are all about. And so it does cost money to engage the public. I think the public needs to know. And so it's really more, in my opinion, about transparency and honesty and public trust.
Thank you, John. And Joelle?
Thank you, Bernie. I think frankly, the amount of money we're spending on these races is crazy, honestly. We are raising a large sums of money to reach voters, engage voters, send out mailers, send out postcards, do digital advertising. And it just shouldn't be this way. I would be a big fan of everyone having the same amount of money and spending it to do whatever they can with that exact amount. But that's not going to happen anytime soon. So I would actually very much support lowering the $4,900 limit. But at the same time, that doesn't necessarily get us where we need to go. You know, as others have said, how do we limit PACs? What about self-funded campaigns? And what about overall spending on a campaign? As John mentioned, transparency, that is really key. People need to know where campaign contributions are coming from, especially in these large PACs. So we need to really ferret out what can we do locally, and then what do we advocate for at the state and federal levels to get this campaign finance under control.
Thank you. And Suzanne?
Thank you, Bernie. I agree with much of what has been said here. I'm fine with lowering the limit. I think, you know, as long as everyone is on the same playing field in terms of the cap, you know, that it can be 2,500, it can be 2,000, whatever, you know, the voters or what people, you know, would want, what the community wants. I know that that's been a very common thread throughout the campaign. And I think all four of us can attest that, you know, raising funds is challenging. You know, we all work full time and, you know, we're campaigning, and this facet is just a really complex component. But it's sadly a necessary part of this, because campaigns do cost money. And, you know, being able to disseminate the message, whether it's through media or through mailers, et cetera, that it's a complex machine, which we're all learning. So I'm in favor of transparency and keeping things, you know, open. And I think campaign finance reform is a huge and important topic, not only on the local level, but at the state and federal level as well.
Great, thank you. And this next question will start with John. And the question is, what would you propose to do to include more voices in the budget process and make the results more understandable and transparent to all?
I think Ann mentioned something earlier about adding a narrative to the county budget. I think that's a great idea because we did that about 10 years ago here in Yountville, and it made a huge difference with our residents. Some people are stat people, numbers people, and some people are narrative people. I'm a narrative person. And so when I'm looking at dozens and dozens and dozens of pages of numbers, it helps me to have that narrative summary to understand the priorities, the reasons for balancing budgets that way. And I know that there are a lot of other people out there like that. So I think that the best way we can reach people is to not get lost in the weeds that many of us, when we're in elected office or county staff or city or town staff, we live it every day. And so we make assumptions about the understanding. So we need to make sure that we are reaching out all different kinds of platforms, because not everybody's on social media, not everybody's on a computer, not everyone reads the newspaper. So we need to continue to reach out, explain what the processes are throughout. I mean, unfortunately, we have about 5 workshops, public workshops, every budget session, and we get no one to attend. And so we continue to outreach. Let's assume that no one's heard it yet and make sure that they can engage if they choose to, because not everybody chooses to engage, but we want to make sure that the information is available to them.
Thank you, John. And Joelle.
Thanks for this question, Bernie. There is something known as a budget transparency ordinance, and there are counties and cities throughout the state of California that use these. This is a mechanism really for laying out how you can make your budget accessible and understandable to everyone in the community. I think it would be very, very important. This doesn't have to be a long drawn out sort of policy. It can be actually very easy, something that we can put together to just assure that we have a transparent process and make this an easy process for people to engage in. I would also advocate for budget roadshows. Those happen in other jurisdictions as well. This assures that everyone in the county has an opportunity to participate in helping to quote unquote build the budget, to really talk about priorities so that priorities drive the budget. This would be something that you would have maybe in every city or town and you know, maybe in the more outlying areas as well. We really need to help our residents engage. Yes, we have public meetings where we go over the budget, but that can be pretty mind numbing even for people who know what's being talked about. So frankly, I think it's not something really exciting for most residents to sit through, but I think there are ways to make those connections between priorities and budget that make budgets more real for people. And
Thank you. Sorry.
easier to understand.
And Suzanne.
Thank you, Bernie. You know, I think even before we get to the budget process, I think it's about engagement. You know, having knocked on doors for over a year now, I will say, you know, many citizens are just so busy in their daily lives that they don't understand the structure of local government. Many of them say, what do you supervise? What does a supervisor do? So I think even starting with that most basic information would be paramount. Then we can get into the more nuanced budget issues, which of course should be 100% transparent so that people can see where their dollars are going, their tax dollars at work. It should not be all to overhead. It should be to services. It should be to deliverable, tangible solutions for the taxpayers and the residents. You know, I think that one of the initiatives that I want to, going back to engagement and education, is as supervisor, even if it's just once a week, going into our local high schools and our college and really explaining local government. I don't, you know, we all took a civics course, but it was more about the 3 branches of government and kind of big picture things. But really, one of the things that pushed me to run is that I think at the local level, you can provide tangible solutions. You can put a stop sign, you know, on the road that needs it. You can you can repair a road. All those things that people will see in the budget, you know, need to come from local government. So understanding that will then get us to marketing the budget process effectively and getting it to the everyday person in English and Spanish and many other languages.
Thank you. And Anne.
Yeah, thank you. Again, another great question. And just to kind of follow up on something that Suzanne just mentioned, I found the same thing when I go door to door, that it's folks are so busy raising their kids, working their jobs, taking care of their elderly relatives, managing their home, their defensible space, that they, you know, may not understand all the pieces that we're thinking about every day. But I would definitely say it's important for us to remember, it's not that they don't care, right? And so I think there is interest and people care. And how do we break things down into manageable pieces so some information can be absorbed? And what's been mentioned before, and I think I mentioned this in an earlier question, the idea of a narrative that goes along. And I know the budget that we do have, there are agency narratives, but I think you could also, and I know San Francisco County has done this, where there's a more programmatic budget so that you can see these dollars are allowing this program to accomplish these goals, a little more connecting the dots more clearly. So that's another piece. I think, as has been mentioned, the workshops are so relevant. And again, let's focus on one subject at a time. And going back to what we talked about before, accessibility of timing and bringing the budget to folks in their community and perhaps connecting it to, wildfire. We know we need to fund it. Let's look at the county budget on that and some of the other issues that we've talked about as well. So.
All right, thank you. And the next question will start with Joelle. What ideas do you have to make our county economy more resilient and sustainable, especially with situations like the pandemic? And Joelle.
Okay, great. Thank you. I was having a conversation with Bruce Wilson last week. He is the director of the North Bay Workforce Alliance, and he has some great data, and I encourage everybody to sit down and talk with Bruce. But we really have to figure out this jobs housing balance, and it's very, very important to the economy that we have a workforce that can make a decent wage, live in a home where they're not living in crowded and unhealthy conditions, and can be part of the fabric of the community. We do have, issues with low wage jobs. We have an agricultural and hospitality driven economy. And at the same time, we have incredibly high real estate values. So that's an interesting combination, and it makes it really difficult. So are there ways that we can bring other industries here? I know this has been talked about a lot. We used to have the Napa Valley Economic Development Corporation. Is there a way that we can reconstitute something that is similar to that? We need to be thinking about what else can we bring to Napa County so that we are not completely really dependent on agriculture and hospitality for our workforce. The other is making sure, oh gosh, am I done already? I have so much to say on this one. So thank you.
Okay, Suzanne.
Thank you, Bernie. I think that, the pandemic actually pushed more economic diversity into Napa Valley, as we saw in the beginning when people wanted to live in more open spaces and not in crowded cities. We have had a younger generation move, and actually all generations from what I've seen from knocking on doors. When you ask, what do you do? I work from home, I'm in marketing, I'm in tech. And I think the work from home initiative has really enabled some diversification in terms of people that are living here in that live work space. I too am a fan of Napa Valley Economic Development Corporation. I think that we can get more data to bring different types of industries here, notwithstanding the fact that, again, agriculture is still the main economic engine, but I think there are ancillary industries, opportunities in health and wellness and other sectors that we can bring in so that we're not a monolith. And I think that everyone, I think we're all on the same page on this one, that we can work toward that. And I think there are stakeholders at the table that are ready to make it happen.
Thank you. And Anne.
Yeah, I think one of the ways to make our county more resilient and sustainable, and our county economy that way, is to really look at the ways that we as a county are supporting our working families. And one of the things I will first just agree with what I've learned from Bruce Wilson at the Workforce Alliance has been so helpful, and talking with Beth Painter, who served on the original Napa Economic Development Corporation. I think there's really an opportunity here now post-COVID, as has been mentioned, right? We have new opportunities, and it would be great to have that reconstituted in this new world when we have more folks who are working from home. But one of the things that we know so many working families are struggling with is childcare. And in fact, most of District 3, I was speaking with the folks at the Community Resources for Children, they were talking about much of District 3 as a childcare desert, meaning we have many more childcare spots needed than are available. So the county being able to do more in that space would support more resiliency for workers and their families. And transportation, again, that's another place where the more we can amp up our public transportation services, we're helping workers get to their jobs and succeed in the workplace.
Great, thank you. And John?
What I would also say is, I agree with a lot of what's been said here, but our core economic driver is our agriculture, our wine industry, hospitality, tourism. We need to embrace that as we have for many, many decades, because that's where our jobs are. That's where our families can make livable wages. That's what attracts people from around the world to come here and invest in our county. I think that is it has been proven, not just from the pandemic. Our resiliency as a wine, restaurant, hospitality, and natural resource destination has been proven to be incredibly resilient. We need to continue to support those efforts. That's where the majority of the investment has been made in our county, is those that are hiring people, supporting working families, giving people apprenticeship opportunities. I'm glad that Bruce Wilson is getting so much pub tonight. He's a great guy with the Workforce Alliance of the North Bay. I'm glad we all know him because he's a great resource. Creating more apprenticeship opportunities for young people, especially our military veterans that are coming home and looking to get trained up for their life after service. And those resources can be best put to use by supporting our core agriculture and wine industries.
Great, thanks so much. Okay, and I think this will be the last question we'll have time for. There's talk of a commuter rail line from Vallejo to Calistoga. What are your thoughts about that and other ways to meet our traffic and road needs in general? And we'll start with Suzanne.
Thank you, Bernie. I think that any system or program that increases efficiency and reduces cars on the road would make sense. As long as we're not impinging on any, agricultural issues, any environmental issues, I think that the commuter rail would make sense because there are many workers that come from outside of Napa and drive all the way to Calistoga, work in the vineyards, work in wineries. And we need to be able to come up with solutions that are not just, packing people in cars. In general, I think that we have incredible opportunities to decrease traffic. The roundabouts, in the entrance of City of Napa have so far been a success, even though it's taken some getting used to. I think there's additional discussions of roundabouts elsewhere so that we are able to speed traffic through and not create any issues in terms of bottlenecks as we see up valley. And everywhere really. So for me, I think that working with our traffic commissions and associations, identifying thoughtful solutions that we can move people without creating traffic is paramount.
Great, thank you. Anne.
Yeah, I love the concept of a commuter rail line. I've talked with folks about that in years past. And so, that's a big ticket item, but I think dreaming big for something like that would be fabulous. So I would be very much in support of an exploration of that. I think the question of what to do in the short term, I think NVTA is doing a great job with its mission to, improve opportunities and options for non-car, non-auto transport are great. I know we had a little hiccup with the Rutherford roundabout in the paper recently, but we've got the Vine Trail continuing to go through. And I do think that has potential as some level of a commuter corridor. But again, really that only works if you're commuting to a place that's not far, your workplace is not far from your home, which brings us right back to our affordable housing conversation. And the other thing I wanted to mention that came up at an event I had recently was senior transportation, people not being able to get from their homes to their doctor's appointments in different cities in the county. So helping look at seniors specifically, I think would be an important part of solving our transportation challenges.
Great, thank you, Anne. And John.
Yeah, I've been on the board of directors for the Napa Valley Transportation Authority for about 15 years, and we are seeing many years of planning actually turning into action. The Saskell Junction flyover at the south part of the county, for example, to improve traffic flow. But specifically to commuter concerns, and this has been brought up for many, many years at NVTA, housing needs to be available locally to get people out of their cars. That's the bottom line. I know that the Napa Valley Wine Train has looked at, has seriously considered adding commuter cars to that rail system, but that has significant impacts on there's a federal tax status that might impede that from happening while it's currently an entertainment rail line. So that's something that would need to be fully vetted and explored, but they are open to it. But what happens for that first and last mile? If you don't live and work near the wine train, you can't get to your destination. Ultimately, this comes down to housing available for all income levels throughout the county. So that's up to the individual jurisdictions to make sure that we're providing more housing supply that is affordable, and we need to make those resources available. Californians love to drive on their own in their cars. I've lived here my whole life, and I know that, and we need to break that trend and offer people a closer live-work relationship.
Thank you. And Joelle?
Yeah, I think that anything that really decreases emissions and vehicle miles traveled is something that we should be looking very, very seriously at. Also, really studying the NVTA's active mobility plan for 2040. I think that's we need to really embrace that and see how we can implement that. That would provide for more infrastructure for walking and biking, things to get us, out of cars, out of buses, etc. And I think that, as others have said, housing really is the key. Helping people to live and work in proximity is very, very important, because we will continue to have these transportation and traffic issues if we cannot bring people here and to live more closely to their jobs. And I think that the cities and the county are going to have to work really closely together, because we need to see more mixed use in our cities, especially in city of Napa, for example. We need to see both housing and commercial together, so that people are really able to walk and bike to many of the things that they need to do, and even, yes, to their workplace.
Great, thank you. Well, that's all the time we have for questions. So now we will go in the reverse order that we started in, for 1 minute closing statement for each candidate. So Anne, we will be starting with you.
Thank you. I'm running for Napa County Supervisor because I care deeply about this valley and the people who live and work here. I have the skill set and the experience to address our greatest challenges, like wildfire, drought, and affordable housing. And I know that it will take a balanced, community-oriented vision to get the job done. I'm grateful to be endorsed by Supervisors Diane Dillon and Brad Wagenknecht, and Napa Mayor Scott Sedgley, and City Council members from Calistoga, St. Helena, Yountville, and American Canyon. I have the support of the Democrats of Napa Valley, the Sierra Club, business groups like the North Bay Leadership Council, the Napa Solano Central Labor Council, and other groups, including CAL FIRE Firefighters 281. I have a strong belief that government is here to serve residents and can make our lives better. I look forward to working together to address the challenges that face our county and putting us on a path to sustainability, inclusivity, and resilience. I hope to earn your vote.
Thank you. And John, 1 minute.
Thank you. And again, thanks for everyone that has stuck with us through this 90 minutes of learning more about us. I emphasize again that my leadership experience is the most important thing for especially District 3, with all the changes in leadership that are happening. I've actually done the work for many, many years, well past my role as mayor in Yountville. Being president of the statewide League of California Cities, again, as I mentioned earlier, 482 cities with a board of over 50 people working collaboratively. That's one of the things that I keep hearing when I'm walking in neighborhoods, especially in St. Helena and Calistoga, Angwin, even in Pope Valley. They're talking about, what is the county doing? They've forgotten about us. We don't like the discourse, the way people are working or not working together. I have a long record of collaboration and partnerships with my colleagues here in Napa County, as well as the state and even at the national level. And I will continue to work that way as your District 3 supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And Joelle.
Well, people do frequently ask me what first needs to be accomplished by the new board. And I feel very strongly that what we need to concentrate on is hiring a new CEO, a permanent county council, and a new public health officer. These are all extremely critical roles, and I want these roles to be filled by people who have vision, an ability to create and manage excellent teams, people that are adept at collaborating with the board and the community, and always having an eye toward equity, outreach, and inclusion. Climate change is and will continue to loom large on the agenda. Managing our natural resources is going to be essential to the protection of agriculture, our residents, and our ecosystems. And housing. With the partnership of the county and the city of Napa, we really are making strides toward creating housing. And it's a great example of what we can do when jurisdictions work together and interdependently. I believe underlying both the successes and the failures of the county is really communication. When government and representatives communicate openly, honestly, and respectfully with each other and community members, we really can achieve our collective vision for health and prosperity for everyone.
Thank you, Joelle. Sorry. At the minute, it was a little fast.
That was perfect time to end it.
And Suzanne.
Thank you, Bernie. And thank you all for being here tonight. I will conclude by saying that if you have been following closely, my campaign has been markedly different. It is focused on solutions and has been a positive one. I do not believe that our community is comfortable with the status quo, the current direction of the county, with a lot of insider politics and what we like to say as drama. If you would like leadership in Napa County that values thoughtful decision-making, that puts taxpayers and residents first, transparency, and a new beginning in our local politics, then I ask for your vote on or before November 8th. We so desperately need new ideas and a fresh perspective. My record of service in the community, in conjunction with my ability to get things done, will change the course of Napa County politics. I'm thankful to have the support of Senator Dodd, Supervisors Diane Dillon and Ryan Gregory, former Mayor Jill Teckle, Vice Mayor Mary Luros, Councilmember Bernie Narvaez, the Farm Bureau, North Bay Leadership Council, and many, many more community leaders. We want Napa to be a diverse and vibrant community, and one of the ways to make that happen is to elect leadership that reflects that diversity. Thank you for the support. Have a great night.
And thank you all for giving your time. I know you've been asked for time for lots of different forums and meetings, and we really appreciate this. And just even for your willingness to serve our Napa community by running for office. Now I return the forum back to Terry to close us out. Thank you.
We especially thank the audience for joining this session to meet the candidates and for proposing your thoughtful questions. For further information, for further information about or to submit questions for our upcoming forums, to learn about all the candidates and ballot measures, links to our Voters Edge Guide and other election information, please visit the League's easy-to-use website, lwvnapa.org. If you would like to be involved with the League of Women Voters, men and women, helping to make democracy work for everyone, it's easy to join. Just visit our website. A reminder that the deadline to register to vote and still get a ballot in the mail is October 24th. You can register and vote conditionally in person up until 8 p.m. on November 8th at a vote center or the election office. If you have moved or changed your name or wish to change your party affiliation since you last registered, you need to re-register. Also, please remember to sign the back of your ballot and ensure your signature matches the one with which you are registered. To check on your registration or to track your ballot, see votersedge.org. If you vote by mail in Napa County, you can avoid any postal delivery delays by using one of the many drop boxes in Napa. And you do not need postage. All drop boxes in the Elections Office Vote Center will be available starting Monday, October 10th at 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. Sorry. For the Dropbox locations and information on the other vote center locations and opening dates, please see our Napa County Elections site at https://www. And is that on a card somewhere? Yeah.
I think we.
Anyway, countyofnapa.org /3325 /voting -information. I guess there's a
Sorry,
slide.
Terry.
The election department would like us to announce that we need more vote center workers. The pay is good for a few weeks of work. For details, see the County of Napa Elections webpage. Finally, please encourage your family, friends, and neighbors to vote in this election. Every vote counts. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks to all.